This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to the Next Man Up. Hey guys, welcome back once again to the Next Man Up podcast. So good to have you with us and honored that you would give us your time today and to be part of this community that's changing the world by raising up healthy and godly men. That is our mission. Thank you for joining us on that mission. Thank you for joining us here today. This is Mark, you know that. And Josh is with me once again.
Hello, hello.
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
Thanks for signing up for one more.
You know it.
So I must admit that I'm a little, what's the right word? Trepidatious?
Yes, we'll go with that.
Yes, about this topic that we're going to get into today.
Uh-huh.
You and I've talked a little bit about it, and I think it's important for us to address this, but to address it in a way that is bigger than the individual circumstances or the differing opinions. Mm-hmm. Can I tiptoe around this anymore before I just get right into it?
Just do it.
Okay. So unfortunately, we have all in this country, in the U.S., witnessed what took place last week for us recording this, maybe a few weeks now by the time this airs, in our nation's capital.
Uh-huh.
And there's a whole series of events that have cascaded from that. And at the time of recording, don't know how this is going to play out. Mm-hmm. But we do know that we've got an inauguration that's coming up and anticipating that we will exchange one elected leader for another. But what happened at the Capitol is it's unfortunate. It's a disgrace to our freedom as a country, our freedom of expression, our right to be heard and to protest, and all of that stuff, regardless of your political party affiliation. What went down at the Capitol was wrong.
That's not good.
It's not good. And there should be and have been consequences for those that broke through and violated and put our elected officials at risk. It's just wrong. Mm-hmm. But here's the interesting thing, and what caught my attention, and why we're having this conversation today. And again, I guess let me preface this just a little bit more. This isn't about party politics. What we're going to talk about today. So don't write me that email. By the way, it's feedback@thenextmanup.com. but don't write me that email that you're for or against, because the conversation that we want to have today is bigger than that. And
we are not making this into a political podcast. That's right. That's not what we're doing here.
I don't want to do that. You might enjoy that. I don't want to do that. But it's a current event. It's happening now. And there's a moment here, I think, for us to highlight something that's relevant to this mission that we're about.
Yes.
So, came across an article the other day, and the title of the article was this: Former Chief of Staff John Kelly says Trump sees his manhood at issue in refusal to admit mistake in Capitol riot.
Well, that's a loaded headline.
It's a loaded headline.
Okay, so what did Kelly actually say?
So Kelly said this.
No, so before, who is Kelly?
Kelly is a retired 4-star Marine general who served as Trump's top aide from the end of July in 2017 until early in 2019 when he resigned.
So a man who is familiar with leadership.
He was familiar with leadership. He's familiar with structure and hierarchy and responsibility. Mm-hmm. Also familiar with the Trump administration and Trump the man, Trump the person, right?
Okay, so what did Kerry actually say?
So Kerry said this: I don't understand it, although I had to deal with it every day. Pulling out some quotes here. The man does not ever, ever, ever want to appear weak or that he might have been wrong. He doesn't have the ability to do that, to admit he's made a mistake. He doesn't have the ability to do that. His manhood is at issue here.
Well, that's fascinating. Now, whether Carrie's telling the truth or not is not really what we're talking about here.
That's right. This is his opinion.
It's his opinion that he said. Whether it's true or not, that's different deal.
Yep.
The interesting thing about his quote is the idea that admitting a mistake would be a threat to our manhood.
That's right.
Or a concept of being manly. That's where you're going with this, right?
That's exactly right. And that, again, because this is a current event, because it's happening now, and the way he worded this, it's like we have to have this conversation. It has to take place. You and I have to have this conversation right now, because the current event has now, I think we can highlight this current event through a different lens, in a different light, that isn't so much about, did Trump do that or did he not? Does he deserve another round of impeachment or does he not? It's not us, them, Republicans. It's not that. It's another example of where men have tied, adult males have tied their understanding of manhood to this component of, I can't be wrong, I can't admit mistake, and I can't because then I will be perceived as weak.
Yeah, so it's not that we're not talking about Trump specifically. We're using this particular anecdote about Trump as an example for a larger problem that affects men in general. This problem of not being able to admit our mistakes because it affects how we perceive ourselves or how we perceive other people will perceive us or something along those lines.
Yeah, so in the context here of what we're doing, which is helping boys to transition into men, to cross that threshold. If you've never experienced that as an adult boy, if you will, if you've never really defined what healthy and we would add also godly manhood is, then one of the strong cultural traditional messages is, don't be weak. You can't be weak. I remember reading this in Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And there's a whole section in there just about the pressures that men feel. And she nails it. She said, basically, every man lives under this pressure of not being seen as weak. Well, John Kelly just used those exact words in his description of this president, right? Like, it's the same reason why boys are told, don't cry, or they're told to man up, or to be a man, or to stop that behavior, because men aren't weak like that. Whether it's explicitly stated or implicitly understood, the underlying message is, don't be weak, because weakness is not equivalent or associated with manhood.
Well, there's so many ways we can go here right now, but I can sympathize with not wanting to be perceived as weak. One of the aspects of manhood is being a protector, being able to protect your family and being able to protect those around you. I think that's a major component of what it means to be a man. So if you're weak, that means that you can't protect. So I sympathize with not wanting to be perceived weak or not wanting to be weak, period.
Yep.
Because there is some truth to that. I think where it gets twisted is to marry weakness with being wrong or making a mistake.
Yes. That
a mistake is somehow weakness.
Yes.
The idea that you have to be right all the time, or that you are right all the time, is, well, it's fundamentally flawed. The scientific method is based on the idea that we're mostly wrong. Like, scientists spend most of their lives trying to prove themselves wrong.
Right.
Like, where's the flaw in my theory? So the idea that being wrong or making a mistake is weakness, I think maybe that's where the issue is. I don't know.
Yeah. I think I think you're right on here because there is a desire and a healthy and natural draw towards strength as a man. But equating weakness as making mistakes and strength as always being right, I think that misses the mark. You can be strong and wrong and healthy at the same time. Like there's a way that that you can navigate life and recognize that it is okay to make mistakes. Making mistakes are just part of who we are and how we live. And they're not necessarily identity flaws or personality flaws. It's how we grow and develop. But if we have this unhealthy association as mistake-free is part of my strength and projection of manhood, then we've missed it. We've missed the mark.
As you're talking, I'm not sure exactly how one-to-one this correlates, but there's this process called the OODA Loop, which is object, orient, decide, act.
Okay.
Or observe, orient, decide, and act. And part of that whole OODA Loop thing is recognizing when you're making a mistake so that you can change it and make a different action. But if you never make a mistake, then you can never make a different action than what you did before, and you can never correct course. That doesn't sound like weakness to me. That actually sounds like strength. So, if anything, recognizing your mistakes is a strength, not a weakness.
I totally agree. Like we talk all the time here about setting the bar higher, setting a higher standard, redefining what courage and strength and bravery really means. And it's not hiding from mistakes or hiding from failures or hiding from things that, like, that's cowardly, in fact. And yet in our male tradition, our male psyche, somehow we've missed it. We've gotten it wrong that to make a mistake and to admit having made a mistake somehow makes us weak. And we can't be weak because at that point our man card gets yanked. And it's a lie. It's a complete lie. And yet we continue to propagate this lie as a male species, if you will, by buying into it and by hiding from things that go wrong or hiding from our mistakes or not understanding there's a better and bigger way to define what it means to be strong and brave and courageous.
Do you ever make a mistake as a dad?
Oh, gosh, dude. All the time. All the time.
Same here.
Right.
So did your dad.
So did my dad.
And so did my dad.
So why is it that so I see exactly where you're going. Why do we continue to believe that we have to be mistake free? But we see other people, I don't know, maybe it's this sense of if I make fewer mistakes, then my manhood is better and more secure than your manhood because you're making other mistakes. You're making more mistakes than me.
Well, I wonder if I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to try to avoid mistakes.
Fair enough.
So the idea that we should just be totally happy with making as many mistakes as we can because we'll just learn faster, depends on your setting. If you're a scientist, going back to the beginning of our conversation, if you're a scientist and you make a mistake in your theory and you quickly realize that you're wrong, this is a good thing to do.
In other situations, the consequences might be a little
higher.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to try to avoid mistakes. I think the poison of it is not admitting when you do, or not being able to acknowledge when you do, not even being able to realize that you have made a mistake, because to even let that enter your psyche is going to crack the foundations of your concept of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
That's super dangerous.
Yeah.
And there's cliches of dads who never apologize, of fathers who will never admit that they are anything less than perfect. And then when their kids discover that their dad actually is imperfect, there's a disillusionment that just clouds the whole relationship from beginning to end. Because now you never Now the son never knows like what was a mistake, what wasn't a mistake, what was good. Like everything is now up for grabs because now it's like maybe there shouldn't be dads at all. Like if you want to go to like
right to the extreme,
you just lose all sense of like perspective on things. But that's a thing. That's a type of father figure, a very unhealthy one. But it exists, and we want to keep that from happening. Like we want to be able as fathers to see where we're making mistakes so that we can produce men and not just adult males.
Yeah. And I think just taking another run at this, it is establishing a bigger, broader, healthier understanding of what it means to be a man and being secure in that and understanding that weakness. So we've been talking about redefining strength. It's probably like worth redefining weakness here too. Weakness shouldn't be defined as making a mistake or having a failure moment or event. Weakness should probably be thought of more as passivity. Like using Robert Lewis's language in defining manhood, that weakness of holding back and not leaning in and not bringing your full self like that. That's giving into weakness. And counter that with the strength of being secure in your manhood and who you are as a person and your worth on the inside, not just tying it to the things you do or your performance. But like if we can understand what unhealthy weakness really is, that I think might spur us on toward embracing this bigger idea of strength.
For me, when I hear the word weak, I hear frail. That there's like something that's lacking in substance to a thing. And there's a physical aspect, for me at least, when it comes to the word weakness, that like I'm not able to pick up a heavy object.
Okay.
Or like do a pull-up, which by the way I can't right now, which is sad. And I think that masculinity and able-bodiedness have a lot, they're connected. That whole protector thing is connected. Like if you're not physically able to do the thing that you need to do to protect, then that means that you're weak, right?
Right.
So Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And
Excellent book.
I haven't read it. I've seen some quotes from it. I'm probably going to misquote it and paraphrase it poorly. But the idea is, or where I'm going with this is, if you're a Holocaust survivor, if you're in a concentration camp, you have no power, and you're systemically starved to break you down mentally and physically.
Yep.
And so, by definition, you are weak physically.
Yes.
Everything is pointing in that direction. Frankl talked about the people who survived the Holocaust weren't those that were necessarily physically strong, but those who were mentally strong and mentally resilient. And there's different kinds of strength and different kinds of, or different ways to protect. So while you may not be able to lift a heavy object and be strong in that way, you may be able to mentally lift a heavy topic and protect your son from something that he's not even aware might be happening.
Yeah.
Because you're mentally moving that heavy load off of him. And I think the ability to recognize and admit a mistake is a form of mental and emotional strength, not mental and emotional weakness.
Yeah. Well said. I 100% agree. Maybe it took us a while to get to that succinct statement.
It was a very long road, I know.
But no, you're right on. Admitting like that is a sign of strength. It takes way more strength, mental strength, to admit something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, or you made a mistake, whatever, than it does to hide from it and avoid it.
Apologizing is so hard.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, the like, hey, I'm sorry I cut you off. That's one thing, but like, hey, I'm sorry we like didn't go on the weekend that we had planned on for 6 months. I should have not taken that extra shift at work. I'm really sorry. That's a hard conversation.
Yep. It's interesting you bring up the apology. It makes me think of another, some leadership training that I was in a number of years ago, and an apology process that they taught. And it's been a while since I've looked at it, so I won't get it completely right. But it's naming the offense, owning your role in the offense, apologizing for the offense, asking for forgiveness for the offense, asking if there's anything else that needs to come out in this conversation. And then if my memory serves, the final piece of this apology process is to say, please hold me accountable for not making this mistake again. Help me to do better and not do this again. Like, that's way more that's hard. That's a lot more than sorry, man.
Yeah, that's not just a sorry, man thing.
Right. Right. But to your point, talk about the mental and emotional strength to be able to not just say those words, but to embody them and to live them out. You know, words matter for sure, but when words and actions are out of alignment, guess what? Your actions reveal what you believe 100% of the time. But when you can align your words and your actions and have an in-depth apology process and reconciliation like that, like, dude, the reason why we don't see that happen is because it's so hard.
Yeah, and there's coming back to politics, there's a political cost to doing that thing as well.
There
so the way that our political culture exists right now in the United States is admitting mistake means inviting defeat.
Yep.
So if you admit that you did something wrong, then you run the risk of not getting reelected. Well, that's a career. Like, it's we've created this political environment that to admit a mistake is effectively to commit career suicide.
Yep.
That's an unhealthy political
place.
atmosphere. It's also an unhealthy atmosphere inside a family.
Or a business.
Or anywhere.
Or a church. Any organization that does not allow for the admission and the resolution of mistakes, or rather punishes them with whatever punishment gets meted out. It's not a healthy place.
Yeah, and the thing about forgiveness, or the thing about asking for forgiveness, is it has to be an individual thing. You can't, like, I don't know how you collectively ask for forgiveness. Yeah,
you don't. For it to really be truly heartfelt and sincere, it's got to be one-to-one. You're right.
So, problem comes when the offense isn't a one-to-one offense. But now we're going down a whole other rabbit hole that we're not going to get into, because this is not a political podcast.
It's not. It's not. And even as we're talking, there's a couple of other examples recently that are coming to mind where mistakes were not admitted. They were hidden because of fill in the blanks, and then they come to light, and there's all kinds of fallout as a result. But I think the to circle all the way back to the beginning, the point is that admitting your mistakes is not a weakness. It may have consequences.
Yes,
it may have significant consequences, but which demonstrates more strength and more courage and more bravery, to hide from those mistakes and pretend they didn't happen, or to embrace them and face the consequences.
Yeah, we have to pursue truth.
That's right. That's right. And we have to decouple ourselves from this message, this male propagated message that to show weakness is an indication that you're not a man. It's just not true.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed the discussion and the topic. Thanks for engaging with this one. I hope, listeners, guys, I hope we were able to navigate through this without you feeling like we're taking sides or we're making claims. Like, that was not the point. The point is, here's a current event that speaks right to the heart of what does it mean to be a man, and how can we be healthy and godly men, and what does that look like, whether that's in DC in the Oval Office, or that's in the boardroom of the organization, that's in the pews of the church. Do churches still have pews?
Kind of.
I think so.
Depending on the church.
In the congregation of the church or at home. It happens all throughout. And we want to encourage you. We want to equip you. We want to challenge you to have a bigger definition of what it means to be a man and be secure in that, so that you can do the courageous and the selfless and the brave and strong work that needs to be done, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, relational, spiritual, all of that. So anyway, what are you taking away from this? Take something away from this that isn't just politically picking sides, but it's seeing a bigger picture, helping you to become the man that you want to become, and so that you can lead your boys to become the men that they were created to be. That's the challenge. That's the message. Dude, thanks for allowing me to tee this one up and engaging well with it. I appreciate it, as always.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Listeners, if you got any feedback on this episode or any other thoughts or whatever, feedback@thenextmanup.com is our email. NMU Journey is our Facebook page. And if you're not part of our community, signed up and getting our regular updates, head on out to thenextmanup.com, get yourself signed up, and take another step into this community of men that are trying to do right by ourselves, by the people around us, and by the sons that are coming behind. Okay, let's land a plane on this one. Guys, thanks for being with us. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. Until then, adios. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. You know, we would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.